Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Casio G-Shock reference GA-V01-2AER. This watch is available from Casio.com for £119, which is €136 respectively. The watch is available in the following colour options: purple, black, yellow and silver respectively. Of the colour options, I think this purple version is one of the best looking. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box, and it is housed inside this fabric bag, which does a good job of protecting in shipping from any damage. This is the watch box itself, made from cardboard. The lid is branded with G-Shock in red. One removes the lid, and as you can see in the right hand portion, there's a cutout which houses this piece of moulded cardboard. The moulded cardboard, good attention to detail because it's the boss with the G-Shock logo, and the watch sits upon this folded roll of cardboard which can be adjusted to suit different strap sizes. So moulded cardboard is well made, and as you can see on the reverse we have stickers. So there's a sticker which denotes that this is recyclable, and there's also a QR code you can scan to download more information about it. There's also a barcode sticker with the reference number for the piece and also the module number 5751, and also it says "Love the Sea and the Earth," which refers to this being made from recyclable cardboard material. So it indicates that Casio and G-Shock are conscientious when it comes to using recyclable packaging. I think it's acceptable to use a basic cardboard watch box like this, bearing in mind it's a low tier price point piece at €136. So with regards to items that come with the piece, this is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and also translate into a plethora of foreign languages, hence the thickness, and it details the operation of the module, which is the module number 5751. One also gets this cardboard warranty card, and as you can see on the reverse there's space to fill in the model number, date of purchase, customer's name and the official dealer stamp. And I'm pleased to report that this G-Shock reference GA-V01-2AER is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is excellent. Often low tier pieces between €0 and €500 price points, they are only covered with a 12-month international warranty, and this is €136 respectively. Therefore it is a low tier piece. One would expect 12 months of warranty. 2 years of international warranty is mandatory for mid-tier pieces between €500 and €5,000, so it's unusual, and Casio G-Shock deserve credit for this. 2 years of warranty at €136 price point. One also gets this leaflet, which is a fold-out leaflet, again translated into English and a plethora of foreign languages, and it details the terms and conditions of the 2-year international warranty and also gives the area warranty in Europe, so it details where you can claim the warranty for each respective country in Europe. And one also gets this fold-out leaflet, which is a disposal of waste electrical and electronic equipment of products for household use. So it's basically a leaflet from Casio giving advice on how to dispose of electrical waste and electronic waste, because of course this is powered by a battery and therefore that's electronic waste. And lastly, one also gets this cardboard tag which has G-Shock on it, and it details the specification of the piece: shock resistant, 200 meter water resistance, super illuminator, which refers to the LED backlight. And on the reverse, again, we have the full barcode of the piece, the reference number of the piece and the module number 5751. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 58.2mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 54mm. Now to clarify, this is an integrated resin case. So we don't have conventional lugs, it's not an integrated bracelet piece, so therefore it's difficult to actually measure the lug to lug, because you can see the integrated resin strap actually is part of the case itself, which is also made from resin. But what I've done is I've measured the lug to lug on the apertures or the cutouts, these oval holes which are in the lugs. So I've measured with my digital vernier caliper because that gives the closest to an effective lug to lug measurement. So from hole to hole on the lugs is 54mm. We have a thickness of 19.5mm, and again the strap is integrated, so therefore we don't have an internal lug width because the strap is not removable as per other resin straps fitted to other G-Shock pieces such as the DW5600 and also the Casio, which are other G-Shocks I've previously reviewed. But what I've done is I've measured it. So we have stainless steel screws on the left and the right hand flanks of the integrated resin strap. So what I've done is I've taken the measurement there, which is the widest point of the resin strap, and again I've taken the measurement at the buckle. So at its widest point, from screw to screw, the lug width is 30.5mm, and the strap tapers from 30.5 down to 21.5 millimeters at the buckle and tang. So we have double tangs in the buckle, as you can see. The case and also the strap is made from resin, and as you can see, very aesthetically pleasing purple tone to it, which matches both the dial, the case and also the resin, because the case and the resin strap are also molded into one. So large aggressive taper, 30.5 down to 21.5, 74 grams of heft. The piece is 200 meters water resistant, and it is also shock resistant, as one would expect with a G-Shock, and it's glazed with mineral crystal, which is single domed. And this is a pleasant surprise, because often G-Shock pieces, as per Casio digital watches, are glazed with acrylic crystal. Now, acrylic is very robust in terms of shock resistance. It doesn't tend to crack. And of course it does provide an effective hermetic seal. This is 200 meters water resistant, and therefore an acrylic crystal would need to be very thick to withstand 200 meters of pressure, such as 3 millimeters thick. This uses a mineral crystal which is single domed. So to clarify, single domed is flat on the underside, curved on the top side. Double domed is curved on the top side, curved on the underside. I'd prefer to see sapphire crystal glazing, but one has to be magnanimous because this is €136 and the specification is strong. Mineral crystal is acceptable. I prefer to see a harder version, either K1 hardened glass or alternatively Hardlex, as used by Seiko in the 5KX, for example, because Hardlex and K1 hardened glass, of course, are more scratch resistant than mineral crystal, and ideally sapphire crystal, which of course is harder and the ultimate. But mineral crystal glazing, credit where credit's due, that is an upgrade on acrylic. The benefit of using mineral crystal is it's not going to be prone to being scuffed and scratched as easily as acrylic, which of course is softer. In terms of clarity, the clarity is good. However, the negative is the single domed mineral crystal does not have AR coating. Now, when I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see the problem. It really is compounded by the fact it's flat on the underside versus domed on the underside. Had they used a double domed sapphire crystal with AR coating and clear AR coating, of course that would be beneficial, because that would reduce the glare and the highly reflective nature of the single domed crystal, as you can see. The other negative is it does have a slight magnification and distortion effect. So when I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see one gets that characteristic distortion, rather like a very thick acrylic crystal, which is 3 millimeters thick. Because it's flat on the underside and curved on the top side, it has a magnifying glass effect to it. So again, if this were double domed, if it were curved on the underside and curved on the top side, that would of course reduce the magnification and distortion effect. However, subjectively, purist G-Shock collectors and Casio purist collectors will appreciate this, because it's a unique characteristic of this reference GA-V01-2AER, the use of the domed mineral crystal versus a flat acrylic lens or crystal, as per other Casio pieces such as the Casio and the DW5600 G-Shocks respectively. So we have 4 pushers. We also have on the 9 o'clock and the 3 o'clock side, we have these nodules. Now, these nodules aren't pushers, but visually they do add to the aesthetic because they give symmetry. So we've got the 4 pushers, but then we've also got these nodules on 9 and 3 o'clock. And although they're not pushers, they do visually look like them. So it looks like you've got 3 pushers on the left flank, 3 pushers on the right. But these central nodules, rather than pushers, have stainless steel screws and actually serve a purpose, because the stainless steel screws screw the resin case to the actual inner case, as you can see, and then the stainless steel case back is secured by 4 crosshead screws, as you can see, and that provides an effective hermetic seal to 200 meters. So specification is good. What does impress me about this is 2 things: shock resistance, which is good. The other thing that's impressed me is 200 meters of hermetic seal, because these pushers are resin and they have 2 rubber O-ring gaskets inside. We have one rubber O-ring gasket inside the stainless steel tube and a second rubber O-ring gasket inside the resin pusher itself. And the 2 hermetic seals, the 2 rubber O-ring gaskets, provide 200 meters. And that's very strong specification, because it is actually difficult to get 200 meters of hermetic seal from 2 seals when you have resin pushers, because it's easy with a screw down crown or even a push pull crown, which is made from stainless steel, because the stainless steel crown meshes very well with the crown tube, and of course the rubber O-ring gaskets, the tolerances can be very tight. It's more difficult to mould resin, the resin pusher plus also the resin case, because the stainless steel tube has to be pressed into the resin case and therefore bonded to provide a hermetic seal between the tube and the case, and then inside it has to have a second rubber O-ring gasket to provide the hermetic seal between the pusher and the tube itself. So they've done a good job. I'm very impressed by the 4 resin pushers having 200 meters. I would expect 50 or 100, but of course it's a specification of G-Shock to have 200 meters, and the second specification is to be shock resistant, hence the name G-Shock. So I'm impressed by the build quality, quality control, materials and finishing. Now, the hands are loomed with Neo-Bright. Neo-Bright is Casio's proprietary name for Luminova. So to clarify, Neo-Bright is not Super Luminova as per BGW9 or C3 Super Luminova, which we're all familiar with. That is now the industry standard. Neo-Bright really is equal to standard Luminova. That's something I'd like to see Casio G-Shock upgrade to. I'd like to see them improve Neo-Bright and upgrade it to using either BGW9 or C3 Super Luminova, the 2 industry standards. Neo-Bright is their own version of Luminova, but I think there's room for improvement. The hands are skeletonized. Now, on a positive note, it's easy to differentiate between the blue hour hand and the white minute hand, although I think they would look better in terms of aesthetics, but also functionality if they were baton hands or Mercedes hands, for example. For example, the hands on the Casio Joro, they are clearly legible, they're correctly proportioned, but also easy to read. That's the point. These skeletonized hands, they are similar in proportion. So the blue hour hand and the white minute hand, they look similar. Now, of course, one can easily tell them apart because one's white, one's blue. That's a given. But in terms of proportions, the actual circular portions on them, they're very similar in diameter. So I think they could have done a better job. For example, if they'd used different shape hands for the hour and minute hand, that would make it easier to read. Now, what you can see around the single domed mineral crystal, we've also got these teeth, or one could say nodules, but they look like teeth. These serve a purpose because they're rather like a bezel, and they actually protect the domed mineral crystal from impact damage. They also protect it from being scuffed and scratched because the teeth around the circumference of the resin case, which act like a bezel, they stick out proud from the single domed mineral crystal. So they actually serve a purpose. They act as a bezel, but they also look aesthetically pleasing because they give the piece an aggressive look or a futuristic look, rather like an alien watch. And the teeth which go around also serve a purpose because they are like indices, because there are 12, and at the 12, 9, 6 and 3, the teeth indices effectively, or one could say bezel teeth, they are larger. So they rather act like applied indices on a dial, and they actually work well because they protect the crystal, but they also act as applied indices, and they're molded into the resin case. Of course, they're not separate, so they look good, but also they make it easy to read the time because the hour and minute hand register against these large teeth, and it's easy to give good orientation because of the larger 12, 9, 6 and 3 indices effectively, or teeth. We've also got what looks like minute ticks. In between, we've got a second set of teeth, and they've got minute ticks. And of course, that acts like a chaptering in between the large teeth at 12, 9, 6 and 3, and then the other teeth. So actually, it serves a purpose. It is easy to read as a result. Now, with regards to the subdials, and I'm referring to the screens as subdials because effectively the world timer hand in silver is like on a subdial. They are negative display. I think a positive LCD display would be clearly legible. The problem with using a negative display, now one could argue subjectively it is aesthetically pleasing, but in order to read the screens, you have to use the backlights. Now, this does benefit from a double LED backlight, so it's beneficial. So to clarify, this has more potency to the backlight because it's double LED versus single LED, so it performs better than a DW5600 G-Shock. It performs better than the Casio because they have single LEDs. This has double, which I'll show you in the Loom test in the dark, and actually works very well. But the point I'm making is in order to read the two screens or the subdials, one has to press the backlights because in daylight it's actually difficult to read the negative displays. I think it would have been better had they used positive displays as per other Casio digital watches, but that's what they've used. So let's look at the case back in detail, and then I'll look at the strap in detail. So stainless steel case back, and they've done a very good job of it. Credit where credit's due. Longitudinally brushed satin finish, very aesthetically pleasing, beautiful luster to it. High definition engraving with a specification reference number for the piece, and they've also detailed the module number, which is the module 5751. In the centre, it's got the iconic Casio G-Shock shock resist shield emblem. Also details 10-year battery, which is very impressive. That's the one aspect of the specification of the Casio module 5751 I like the most, the 10-year battery life. So potentially you could purchase this piece and wear it for 10 years before needing to change the battery. And changing the battery is very easy because we've got these 4 crosshead screws. One can easily unscrew the stainless steel case back and exchange the battery, but every 10 years is very impressive. Often Casio digital watches have a 2 to 3 year battery life. 5 years is impressive, 10 years is really exceptional and really at the upper limit, so they deserve credit for that. In terms of finishing, it's perfectly smooth, doesn't feel rough, doesn't feel sharp despite the amount of engraving. And what I like about it is how flat it is. So it's perfectly smooth, very comfortable. Comfort level and feel good factor are therefore enhanced. And you can see this does not have conventional internal lug width. So unlike other Casio G-Shocks, for example, the DW5600 and also the Casio, which I previously reviewed, the resin straps on those pieces are removable. So one can use lug adapters in order to fit larger width straps. For example, if you want to use a 20mm versus an 18mm, because often Casio digital watches and also G-Shocks have an 18mm internal lug width. And of course, if you're changing the resin strap for an alternative, 18 does look undersized, but you can use lug adapters with those pieces and use a 20mm strap despite the 18mm internal lug width. This one, because the resin strap is integrated to the resin case, you can't do that. So you can't remove the strap, that's the negative, but one could argue, well, it's part of the aesthetic of the piece, having the integrated resin strap moulded into the resin case. It flows nicely, and we've got these apertures at 12 or cutouts at 12 and 6, and of course that does add interest to the piece. So let's look at the strap in detail. Now, the strap is made entirely from resin. It's smooth on the top side, albeit we do have some moulding around the double holes, and the double pairs of holes, the double tangs on the strap engage very well. So we've got an H double tang, as you can see, and this is good. It's reliable, it's reinforced, it's going to be very robust, and the resin plastic is not going to crack or split with regular wear and tear. Also, the buckle doesn't have any sharp edges, it's correctly profiled, and it's nice heavy resin plastic, so there's a good gauge to it, it's not going to break. No sharp edges, no sharp corners, and the colour tone is slightly darker purple but very aesthetically pleasing. The use of a double tang like this, or pair of tangs rather than a single tang, is good because it engages positively in the pairs of holes. So to clarify, this will fit from a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 8-inch wrist size. So we've got a large amount of adjustment, 6 to 8 inches, and even on my large 8-inch wrist I can actually do this up, which is a pleasant surprise, because often Casio digital watches and also G-Shocks, their resin straps are a fraction too short for my large 8-inch wrist. They're made to fit the majority of collectors with a 6 to 7.5-inch wrist, but this actually fits up to an 8-inch wrist, which is good if you have a larger wrist. Now, the underside is textured. They've moulded it, but they've actually moulded grooves into it. The grooves actually serve a purpose because they allow for air circulation between the double holes. They also allow for sweat and perspiration to wick away from the wrist, and also if the watch gets wet, and bear in mind it does have 200 meters of water resistance, so it can be worn for swimming, it allows the strap to dry out quickly because these grooves, which are moulded into the underside, they allow for water to wick away from the strap very quickly, so it does dry out very quickly, both through the holes and also these grooves in the underside. It's surprisingly comfortable for a moulded textured strap. It's not perfectly smooth on the underside, but it actually feels smooth when you're wearing it on wrist. Therefore, comfort level and feel good factor are enhanced. The other thing I like about it is these holes or apertures at the 12 and 6 o'clock side of the case, they have these cutouts, and they've also moulded recesses. Now again, this allows for water, sweat and perspiration to wick away from the wrist, therefore enhances comfort level, but also it allows the resin strap, albeit it is reinforced with the 2 screws going through it to secure it to the bezel case, but actually allows some movement, it allows some articulation because it is thick, as you can imagine, and the resin is stiffer than a natural rubber, NBR, nitrile butadiene rubber, or alternatively FKM floor rubber strap. But because it has this cutout scalloping to it, or recess to it, it actually allows it to be more flexible at the head of the piece. So it actually makes it more comfortable, doesn't feel too stiff and rigid as one would expect. Now it is going to be reliable and robust because it's well reinforced and we've got stainless steel crosshead screws securing it, but actually feels more flexible than you would expect. So I'll give you a wrist shot. Now just bear with me, I'm going to remove my Concord 40 and I'll show you. I'm pleased to say it fits my 8-inch wrist, and this was a pleasant surprise because, as I've detailed, usually Casio digital watches and also G-Shocks, they only fit a 6 to 7.5-inch wrist size, but you can see plenty of length on the end of the strap, and that's actually loose, so I can slide an index finger underneath the buckle and tang at all times, and I can actually adjust the sliding keeper, and I've still got plenty of length, so this will easily fit an 8-inch wrist. And bear in mind, this is now correctly sized with an index finger of expansion, so it would actually fit up to a maximum 8.5-inch wrist, but really 8 inches for comfort. So minimum 6-inch wrist size up to maximum 8-inch wrist size, and still plenty of length. Single keeper is correctly proportioned, and it's also got a pair of holes, which is good because it matches the design of the pair of holes on the strap. So as you can imagine, this does dominate the wrist. It's a very large piece. That's a given. So I'm not going to be critical of it because one has to appreciate this is the aesthetic of the G-Shock. It's a large piece, does wear with wrist present. So straight away I would say if you have a smaller 6 to 7-inch wrist, you can rule this piece out because it really is only meant for larger wrists, 7 to 8 inches plus. This best fits an 8-inch plus wrist size because you can see it's a thick piece. Above all else, the one dimension you need to be mindful of is the thickness. 19.5. Now, needless to say, you'll know this from my previous reviews, 13mm and below is the sweet spot for a piece to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff. At 19.5, this is 6.5mm above the sweet spot of 13. Needless to say, it is not going to slip underneath a shirt cuff. So you're going to have to wear this with t-shirts, polo shirts or short sleeve shirts because of course it's not going to go underneath a business shirt cuff. But as a daily wear piece or a sports piece or recreational piece, yes, you will enjoy the wrist presence of it, albeit it is very tall. Now, the thing that surprised me about it is, although it's tall, it surprisingly feels balanced. It does not feel top heavy as you would expect. The thing I like about it is the lack of heft. Yes, it's a large piece at 58.2 and it does have a long lug to lug of 54mm. Now, to clarify, I've measured the lug to lug with my digital caliper verniers between hole to hole or aperture to aperture from 12 to 6 because effectively these cutouts are the effective lug to lug measurement because of course we don't have an integrated lug. You can actually measure from lug to lug. We don't have a case because the resin strap is integrated, it's molded into the case itself. So I've taken the measurement from hole to hole and it's 54mm. Now 54 lug to lug effectively is well in excess of the 48 lug to lug sweet spot often referred to in my previous reviews. 48mm lug to lug is the perfect sweet spot for all wrist sizes, 6 to 7 and 7 to 8 inch wrist size respectively. So you'll know that from my previous reviews. 54 is long. So again, 6 to 7 inch wrist, you're going to find it to be too long. The case is too long in lug to lug. Also, diameter is excessive at 58.2. However, if you have a 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size and ideally 8 inch plus wrist size, yes, you will enjoy the wrist presence, the thickness, the long lug to lug, and of course the large case diameter, which is 58.2. So yes, it's a large piece, but what I like about it is the lack of heft because it's only 74 grams. 74 grams really does feel similar to a Casio, and it's surprising because visually this does look much larger than the Casio. It does dominate the wrist. The visual impact is more. It's noticeably larger than the Casio, but in terms of heft, it actually feels similar to the Casio I previously reviewed. The thing that surprised me is the resin strap actually distributes the head of the piece heft very well across because we do have a very aggressive taper. 30.5, and that's from crosshead screw to crosshead screw. It's its widest point of the integrated resin strap. So 30.5 down to 21.5 is an aggressive taper. The strap does feel stiff. Now to clarify, in terms of how it feels, it does feel like the resin used in other Casio digital watches and also like Casio G-Shock watches. So for example, the resin strap, in terms of how stiff it is, how soft and supple it is, it feels very similar to the resin strap used on the DW5600 G-Shock. Feels very similar to how stiff or how supple the resin strap used on the Casio is. It's thicker, and also of course the taper is more aggressive, and at the head of the piece end of course it's more reinforced. So there's more meat to the resin, but in terms of how supple it is, I wouldn't say it feels more stiff than the Casio I previously reviewed. It feels the same, but it could be improved. Now, they've missed an opportunity here. Had they moulded the case and also the strap from FKM floor rubber, or alternatively resin case, and rather than having this integrated resin strap, had they used a removable strap as per the DW5600 G-Shock, alternatively the Casio G-Shock, those straps are removable. They have 18mm internal lugs. For example, if this had an FKM floor rubber strap or a silicone rubber strap, yes, that would enhance the comfort level and feel good factor. But of course, it's a design element, so one could say it's part of the specification of G-Shock that the case is made from resin, the strap is made from resin. They always are. That's just the way they're made, because of course the resin does help to make it shock resistant and therefore resistant from impact damage, and it protects the module used, the module number 5751, from shock impact damage. So that's fair enough. There is a reason why they use the resin case and of course resin strap, but I just think it would have been better if the resin strap could be removed, because that would give options. You could remove the resin strap and use a lug adapter as per on the Casio, and then you could fit 20mm straps to the 80mm lug width, but this doesn't have that option. So that's something to bear in mind. The Casio has more versatility because one can use lug adapters and of course change the strap if you want to fit a fabric strap, rubber strap or leather strap to it using lug adapters. But if you have a large wrist and you like large pieces that dominate the wrist that have visual impact, yes, of course you'll enjoy it. On a positive note, the legibility is surprisingly good. Now, when you look at the piece straight on, despite the lack of AR coating on the underside of the single dome mineral crystal, the legibility is actually good because the proportion of the blue hour hand and the white minute hand, they're actually surprisingly legible. However, the subdials, or the two screens at 9 and 6, the legibility could be improved, as I've detailed, by using a positive LCD display versus the negative LCD display. I did apply the same criticism subjectively when I reviewed the Casio, because that also used negative displays for the two screens. I think positive displays on Casio digital watches are beneficial. Positive displays are always easier to read than negative, but this is subjective. Some collectors prefer the negative display just for aesthetic reasons. But legibility is surprisingly good, and these teeth, the 12 teeth, which act like a bezel, they actually act like applied indices, so it is actually easy to read the time. It's surprising, it's intuitive, and you quickly become accustomed to registering the blue and white hands against the teeth, which are effectively the indices. So, comfort level and feel good factor, well, the resin strap does feel stiff, but that's just a characteristic of resin straps. One has to be magnanimous because, of course, resin is not as soft and supple as silicone. Alternatively, nitrile butadiene, NBR rubber, FKM floor rubber, and natural rubber. That's just the way it is. But on a positive note, strap is smooth, albeit textured on the underside and the top side, the moulding, it actually feels smooth. That's the point. Doesn't feel sharp, no sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, doesn't pull arm hairs, that's the benefit, but of course it is stiff, and that's just the way it is with resin straps. They are stiffer than silicone rubber, NBR, which is nitrile butadiene rubber, and FKM floor rubber. It's just a shame this doesn't have a removable strap, and one could potentially fit alternatives because you are stuck with this resin strap. It is comfortable enough to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, and although it's a large piece, and of course it does have excess thickness at 19.5, the 74 grams is beneficial because if you have a large wrist, it does feel comfortable. It feels balanced, it doesn't feel top heavy. Right, so in terms of operation, the 4 pushers. Now, I want to clarify something. I have not read the owner's instruction manual deliberately, and I didn't do that when I reviewed the DW5600 G-Shock, and I didn't do it when I reviewed the Casio G-Shock. The reason why I don't read the owner's instruction manual, I like to pick up a piece, and from the first time I pick it up, I like to see how intuitive it is. And what I mean by that is how user-friendly it is. Can you use the watch without reading the owner's instruction manual, or do you have to read the owner's instruction manual to learn how to use it? So, this one, like the Casio, is actually surprisingly intuitive. or one could say as intuitive as the DW5600, because like many G-Shocks, we have 4 pushers. And it's actually surprisingly easy because the top right pusher activates the double LED backlight, so that's obvious. The lower right pusher, now to clarify, I'm now in the stopwatch complication. So when I push the lower pusher, it beeps, the stopwatch begins to run. And pressing the lower pusher again stops the stopwatch, and it beeps when it starts and it beeps when it stops, just the same as a Casio, just the same as a DW5600 G-Shock. So this is intuitive. Now when you press the lower left pusher, that changes the complications. So for example, world time, and then we've got stopwatch, and of course alarm function. So you can cycle through the alarm function. Now if you look at the silver hand on the left hand 9 o'clock subdial, or the left hand screen if you like, that actually cycles through the world time. Now to clarify, this has a world time complication with 31 time zones and 48 cities. So it's actually surprisingly intuitive, because by pressing the lower left pusher you can cycle through the world time complication. This also cycles through the alarm complication as well, and incredible amount of world time options, 31 time zones, 48 cities. And it's intuitive because it beeps every time you press it, and you can see the silver subdial hand on the left hand screen moves around for the different world time complications. So top pusher resets the stopwatch complication, so just bear with me, I'll cycle back to the stopwatch. So lower pusher, lower right, starts the stopwatch, lower right pusher stops the stopwatch, pressing the top left pusher resets it to 0. So surprisingly intuitive. In terms of how user friendly it is, how intuitive it is, it's the same as a DW5600, it's the same as a Casio. Now the Casio is more complicated. The module used in the Casio is more complicated, has more functions than the DW5600, so it's a given. That takes more usage to become accustomed to, and of course yes, it's beneficial if you read the owner's instruction manual, because yes, it's complicated to set the world time complication because you have 31 time zones and 48 cities. It is laborious. But the basic complications such as alarm, stopwatch, and the 5 daily alarms and hour time signal, they are easy to use. One thing I want to clarify about the backlights is this has a double LED backlight. That's something the DW5600 and the Casio don't have. They have single LED backlights. The double LED backlight is better. The other thing is you can change the amount of time the backlight illuminates. You can have 1.5 seconds, or alternatively 3 seconds if you prefer longer illumination. 3 seconds is enough, and I'll show you that in the Loom test in the dark, but I would prefer longer than 3 seconds, but I understand why they've done that. They've chosen 1.5 and 3 seconds for the double LED backlight because of course 2 LEDs is more power hungry than 1 LED. And this does have a 10-year battery life. Now, if the backlight illuminated, for example, to 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, yes, that would be beneficial, but of course that would deplete the 10-year battery life quicker. It would have 5 years of battery life, for example. So, double LEDs, more power hungry than single. One has to be magnanimous about it only having 1.5 or 3 second options for the backlight, but 3 seconds is good enough. So that's how it works basically. Now, I will do a Loom test, and as I've detailed, this has Neo Bright. And the Neo Bright, just bear with me, I'm actually going to move these hands in a different position so you can see them better. That's better. Right, so as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So Neo Bright is Casio's proprietary name for Luminova. It's not Super Luminova, so it's not C3 green and it's not BG-W9 blue. It's green Luminova. Casio call it Neo Bright. Now you can see they've just loomed the triangle tips of the hands, and you can see negligible performance because this does not register against, and I'm going to illuminate it fully so you can see. I'm just going to actually move the hands out of the way so you can see them better. Just bear with me, I'm going to move the hands and then you'll be able to see them better, because at the moment they're overlapping. So just bear with me, I'll cycle through. I'll take the torch off and I'll be able to handle it with 2. I'm going to move the hands out of the way. There we are. Right. Let's move to an overlap position. That's better. Right. So what I wanted to do is make the hands so they're not overlapping, because then you'll be able to see them better. So just bear with me. I'm going to cycle through the world time complication and get the hands to move to a different position, because I want them to rest in a position where they're not overlapping. Right, so I'm going to change the world time. I'm now setting it to a different time zone, and again it's come back to the original position. I'm going to try and get it to stop at a different position because I want the two hands to move away from each other. Just bear with me. This is actually a good test of how intuitive it is. So you see, if I'm pressing the lower left hand pusher, it changes the world time complication on the left hand screen. But what I want to do is actually get the hands to move to settle in a different position than they are. So if I press and hold in the top right pusher, that should do that. And then if I press the lower pusher, it should stop it. It's not doing it. Just bear with me. What I want to do is get the two hands to sit in a different position to where they are. Right, this time I think it will do it. Just bear with me. Because you can see the tips of the hands. No, it's not going to do it. Okay, so the tips of the two hands, they've loomed the tips, but they've missed an opportunity here because they're skeletonized. So they've got two circular discs. And what they could have done was they could have made the hands fully loomed with Neo-Bright, which is effectively Luminova. And it's a shame because just having the tips means you can't actually read the time in the dark, which is the purpose of having Neo-Bright on the hands. So for example, if I take away the charge, you can now see they're now overlapped, and the camera is struggling to autofocus because we're clearly looking at 3 to 4 layers versus 5 to 6. And it's just the tips of these skeletonized hands which are actually loomed. You can't actually see the hands in the dark very well. As you can see, just the tips of the hands are loomed and they're resting on top of each other, as you can see. Now, had they loomed the teeth, for example, going around which acts like a bezel, had they loomed the 12 teeth, that would be beneficial because in the absence of a chapter ring on the dial, which has cutouts for the two screens, you would be able to read the time in the dark. But as it stands, you can't register. So, for example, you can't tell which is the minute hand, which is the hour hand, and of course, negligible performance because we've only got Neo-Bright, which is Luminova. We don't have BGW9 or C3 Super Luminova. So, problem is you can't actually read the time in the dark. So, really, I'd say the Loom is there for aesthetic reasons versus purpose. And I think had they fully loomed the hands, of course, that would be more beneficial because then you would be able to read the time in the dark. So, yes, it's intuitive, but this is a case of where, yes, it would be beneficial to read the owner's instruction manual in order to set the world time cities and also the world time itself. But I think there's room for improvement. That's the point I'm making because the Neo-Bright, as you can see, negligible performance in the dark, but that's just the way it is. So, one thing I didn't show you was the backlight. So as I've detailed, double LED backlight, you can have it set for 1.5 seconds or alternatively 3 seconds of illumination. Now, as you can see, 1.5 seconds doesn't really give enough illumination. 3 seconds is beneficial. Double LED performance is better than single. That's the benefit. But in order to read the negative displays on the left and the right hand screen, you really have to use the backlight. Now in the dark, yes, you can read the LED numerals easily because they glow white against the black negative display. So that's good, that's fair enough. Yes, double LEDs works better than a single LED as per the DW5600 or the Casio. And I would say, yes, double LED works well, but I would just prefer if it glowed longer or emitted longer than 3 seconds maximum. For example, 5 seconds, 10 seconds or 15 would be beneficial, albeit it would deplete the 10-year battery life. I would prefer if this had 5 years of battery life or even 2 to 3 years of battery life, but the double LED backlight could be set to perform or illuminate for 5 seconds, 10 seconds or 15 seconds because 3 seconds really is the minimum and 1.5 just isn't enough. And the problem is you have to keep pressing the top right pusher in order to get it to illuminate to read the time in the dark. And really 1.5 seconds isn't enough and 3 seconds is really the minimum. So I think 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 15 would be beneficial. So that's the negative of the module. You only have the option of 1.5 or 3 seconds illumination and then it switches off and you have to press the top right pusher again. That's just the way it is. And one has to be magnanimous about that, because that's just a characteristic of the module number 5751. Right, so let's discuss the module in detail. So I'll run through the specifications. It is a heavily complicated module. The 5751, like the Casio module, does have a lot of complications. So world time, it has 31 time zones and 48 cities. It has 100th of a second stopwatch. It has a countdown timer, 5 daily alarms, plus an hourly time signal, so it beeps on the hour, double LED backlight, auto calendar, which runs until the year 2099. You can choose between a 12 or 24 hour format for the digital display. The accuracy is plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Now just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 15 seconds per day or per week. Plus or minus 15 seconds per month is incredible accuracy, better than plus or minus 1 second per day. And I can confirm that this is accurate to 0 seconds per day. Incredible. 10-year battery life, above all else. That's what I like about the module number 5751. Often quartz movements and modules used in digital watches only have a 2 to 3 battery life, and 5 years is excellent. 10 years is exceptional. That's really the upper limit for a digital module. So I think 10 years is something that's beneficial because, as I've detailed, potentially you could purchase this piece and wear it for 10 years without needing to change the battery, and it is easy to change the battery because you simply unscrew the 4 crosshead screws, remove the stainless steel case back, and you can change the battery yourself. That's beneficial. So it's user friendly, and you don't need to take the watch to a jeweler or watchmaker in order to have a battery fitted. You can do it yourself. That's good. So it's incredibly reliable and robust. That's the point I'm making. What I like about the module number 5751 is 10-year battery life, accuracy plus or minus 15 seconds, and it's incredibly shock resistant. Now, of course, it's helped by the resin case, which does give it shock protection, but the module itself is robust. It's reliable, it's well proven, it is shock resistant. And what I like about this case is not only is it shock resistant, but 200 meters of hermetic seal is very strong specification. So it's very good. The negative is really it's complicated. So as I've detailed, yes, it's intuitive because you can press the pushers and you can find out what they do. But the world time complication is the one complication of this piece which is complicated. So you do need to read the owner's instruction manual to navigate through the 31 time zones and the 48 cities, which of course is an incredible number of time zones. 31 time zones plus 48 cities. And really, that's more than one needs. But the point is, it is beneficial if you want to have multiple time zones set into the piece, and effectively you can use the world timer if you change between countries or change between time zones. The only negative is really it is complicated to set. It's not complicated to set the time because if you look at the left-hand screen, or one could call it a subdial with a silver hand, it actually cycles through the hours very simply because you simply press it and it beeps each time and then it moves on to the next time zone. So that's intuitive. So that's easy to set. But if you look at the hands, they take more setting. And as I've detailed, I was trying to get them to sit so they wouldn't overlap because I wanted to show you in the Loom test. But that's not as intuitive as one would expect. Even if you cycle through the date complication, the 12 or 24 hour choice, or alternatively the stopwatch complication, that's all intuitive as per a DW5600 or a Casio. The world time complication is the one complication which is heavily complicated, and that takes a lot of work to cycle through the 31 time zones and the 48 cities. So that's something to note. But however, you can become accustomed to it just by simply trial and error. So if you press the various pushers, you can actually navigate through it yourself and work out how to set the time and how to set the world time complication. Setting the alarm is intuitive, using the stopwatch is intuitive, and changing between 12 and 24 hours is all intuitive. So it is a user-friendly piece. In terms of how difficult it is to use, how intuitive, I'd say it's equal to the Casio. It is more heavily complicated than the DW5600 G-Shock. That's something to bear in mind. So if you want user-friendly, the DW5600, which of course is an iconic piece because it was the first 1983 G-Shock, which was originally designed by Kikuo Ibe. It's an iconic piece. That is the ultimate in terms of user friendly. It's as simple to use as a Casio F91W. That's how simple it is. But this is more complicated due to the world time complication, and I would say it's similar to the Casio, which I previously reviewed. So let's discuss the value and also the quality overall. So when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch will meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So low tier piece, to remind you, low tier is €0 to €500 price point. This is 119 British pounds, which is €136 respectively. So we are in the low tier, but well into the low tier at 136. Build quality, quality control materials and finishing are excellent because the quality of the moulding of the resin is excellent. The debossed G-Shock, which is inlaid with black paint, and also protection, which is debossed and inlaid with black paint, is done to a good standard. No sharp edges, no burrs. The crosshead stainless steel screws are good because they're not going to corrode as per nickel plated mild steel screws. Quality of the resin throughout is moulded to perfection. It's something that Casio do very well on their digital watches and their G-Shocks. The resin case and also the resin strap is done to perfection. No sharp edges, doesn't pull arm hairs, and it is surprisingly flexible, albeit not as soft and supple as silicone, FKM or NBR rubber, as I've detailed. So build quality, quality control materials and finishing are good. Production cost-cutting measure is the use of mineral crystal. I'd prefer to see sapphire crystal with AR coating, but one has to be magnanimous because this is a G-Shock, and of course, usually they use acrylic or alternatively, in this case, mineral crystal. I'd prefer to see K1 hardened glass, or alternatively, I'd prefer to see sapphire crystal because, of course, they're more scratch resistant. And also, I think a double dome sapphire crystal would have been beneficial here versus single domed because, as I've detailed, one gets this distortion and magnification effect, and it is a thick crystal. But one has to appreciate it's 200 meters of hermetic seal. They've made it thick to be shock resistant, but also 200 meters pressure resistant. So one has to be magnanimous about it. I think the specification is good, bearing in mind the complications, because as I've detailed, it is a loaded specification. The Casio module number 5751, like the Casio module, it is loaded. Well time complication, 100th second stopwatch, countdown timer, 5 daily alarms, hourly time signal, double LED backlight, also calendar to 2099, 12 or 24 hour format, plus or minus 15 seconds, 10-year battery life. It's a loaded module. So one has to factor that in, and of course brand heritage is another factor. Kikuo IB designed the first Casio G-Shock, the DW5600 in 1983. This does have that brand heritage behind it. And this is the 2025 G-Shock. Now, in terms of design aesthetics, it's subjective. This has a futuristic or alien design or a sci-fi design aesthetic to it. It is aggressive, it's large, it does have wrist presence. It will appeal to purist G-Shock collectors. Yes, it will be highly collectible. And of course, it is available in other colour options, purple, black, yellow and silver. So it's subjective. It comes down to your personal taste. In terms of value proposition, this goes directly in competition with itself, the G-Shock Casio. Now, similar price point to the Casio, so I'm going to reference it against that, €136. Now, of course, the Casio is available in a plethora of options, both resin and also steel case versions. I would say I think the Casio is more aesthetically pleasing with the octagonal bezel. It looks more like Gerald Genta design from the 1970s, rather like the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak. It really comes down to what you prefer. Do you prefer this sort of angular brutalist design of Genta design with the octagonal bezel on the Casio? Or do you prefer this futuristic alien sci-fi style design with the teeth? And of course, we've got these 4 pushers and these nodules at 9 and 3 o'clock. This really does look like a futuristic piece, but really it's only suitable for collectors with a large 8-inch plus wrist size because it is large. 58.2, 54 lug to lug, 19.5 does make it tall, albeit it's not top heavy. So quality is excellent. Value I'm going to say is okay, and the reason why I say the value is okay, not good or excellent, is because this does face stiff competition at €136, and it actually faces stiff competition from G-Shock itself because the Casio really is an iconic, highly collectible piece, and it appeals to a plethora of Casio collectors and also a plethora of G-Shock purist collectors. So this really competes with the G-Shock Casio, and at €136, that's what it's up against. Really, it comes down to aesthetics. Specification I regard as equal to the Casio. In terms of aesthetics, I like the Casio better. I think it's better looking with the octagonal bezel. The other thing I like about the Casio versus this is the Casio has the benefit of the resin strap can be removed because it has an 18mm lug width, and potentially you can use lug adapters to fit 20mm straps. So that's the benefit of the Casio versus this GA-V01-2AER. So excellent quality, value is okay. I'm going to recommend it for your consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Casio G-Shock reference GA-V01-2AER. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.